Captain Marcus Chun had always believed that humans were the universe's greatest survivors. They adapted, they endured, they fought against impossible odds, and somehow found a way to win. But as his battered cargo ship Resilience drifted through the void with failing life support, enemy warships closing in from all sides, and his crew of 3 unconscious from oxygen deprivation, Marcus wondered if this was finally the moment that broke humanity's legendary streak. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent 15 years running supplies to human colonies on the galactic rim, dodging pirates, hostile aliens, and corporate death squads. He'd survived the Centauri blockade, outrun Vorthan battlecruisers, and once talked his way out of execution by convincing a Kree-Thak warlord that humans made better allies than slaves. But here he was about to die, not in some glorious last stand, but slowly suffocating in the cold darkness between stars. Then, something impossible happened. A transmission cut through the static on his dying communications array, not from the hegemony ships that had been hunting him, but from something else entirely. The voice that emerged was melodic, ancient, and definitely not human. Human vessel, this is Princess Seraphina Drexmore of the Draconic Houses. Your species has intrigued me. I wish to propose an arrangement. Marcus stared at the comm unit, wondering if oxygen deprivation was making him hallucinate. Dragons were myths, legends from humanity's past. They certainly weren't real, and they definitely didn't have princesses flying around in spaceships, making deals with dying human captains. But as a massive shadow fell across his viewport, something that dwarfed even the hegemony dreadnoughts, Marcus realized he was about to discover just how little humanity really knew about the galaxy they'd been exploring for the past 2 centuries. The Dragon Princess was real, and she wanted to join his crew. Marcus Chen's hands shook as he reached for the communication controls, his vision blurring at the edges from oxygen deprivation. The life support systems on the Resilience had been failing for the past 3 hours, ever since the hegemony ambush at the Kepler Station jump point. His crew, pilot Sarah Martinez, engineer Thomas Webb, and medic Dr. Elena Vasquez, lay unconscious in their acceleration couches, their breathing shallow and labored. The cargo ship had taken heavy damage during their escape. Hull breaches sealed with emergency foam dotted the outer corridors. The main drive was operating at 30% capacity, and, worst of all, the atmospheric recyclers were completely offline. Marcus had maybe 20 minutes of breathable air left before he joined his crew in unconsciousness. And then it would only be a matter of time before the hegemony boarding parties found their bodies. He'd been a fool to take the Kepler Station run. Everyone in the smuggling business knew the hegemony had increased patrols in that sector, but the credits had been too good to pass up. A simple cargo run, medical supplies to the human colony on Arcturus Prime, where a plague outbreak had the colonists desperate for help. The kind of mission that reminded Marcus why he'd left his comfortable job with the Terra Merchant Marine 15 years ago to become an independent operator. The hegemony, a coalition of 12 alien species that controlled most of the galaxy's central regions, had declared human expansion illegal after the border wars 30 years ago. They claimed humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to fight for resources that belonged to more civilized species. Any human vessel found outside designated shipping lanes was subject to immediate detention or destruction. Marcus had been running those blockades for over a decade, keeping isolated human colonies supplied with everything from medicine to weapon parts. It was dangerous work, but someone had to do it. The Earth government had officially agreed to the hegemony's restrictions, but they quietly looked the other way when independent operators like Marcus kept the outer colonies alive. But this time, the trap had been perfect. Three hegemony corvettes waiting at the jump point, their weapons already locked onto the Resilience before Marcus could even think about running. He'd managed to escape only because Sarah had pulled off a desperate maneuver through the asteroid field surrounding Kepler Station, using the rock for cover while they jumped to hyperspace with a damaged NAV computer. Now they were lost somewhere in the outer rim, their position unknown, their ship dying around them. The irony was that Marcus had actually succeeded in his mission. The medical supplies were still safely locked in his cargo hold. But unless a miracle happened in the next few minutes, those supplies would never reach the dying colonists on Arcturus Prime. That's when the impossible transmission came through. Human vessel. This is Princess Seraphina Drexmore of the Draconic Houses. Your species has intrigued me. I wish to propose an arrangement. Marcus blinked hard, certain he was hallucinating. The voice was definitely female, with an accent he couldn't place, something that reminded him of ancient Earth languages, but with an otherworldly quality that sent shivers down his spine. More importantly, dragons were supposed to be mythological creatures from human folklore, not real aliens flying around in spaceships. He activated the external cameras and nearly fell out of his chair. The shape that filled his main screen was impossible. A massive creature easily 300 meters long, with scales that seemed to absorb and reflect light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. For enormous wings extended from its serpentine body, and its head was the size of a small corvette, with eyes that glowed like miniature stars. But this wasn't just a creature floating in space. Somehow, impossibly, there was a shimmering field of energy surrounding it, an atmosphere that allowed it to exist in the vacuum without a ship. More disturbing still, the dragon appeared to be wearing some kind of technological harness across its chest and back, studded with what looked like weapon ports and sensor arrays. I know you can hear me, human, the voice continued, and Marcus realized with a start that the dragon's mouth wasn't moving. The communication was coming directly into his head, some form of telepathy that bypassed his ship's comm system entirely. Your vessel is dying, and your crew will perish within minutes if you do not accept my assistance. I offer you a bargain. Marcus found his voice, though it came out as a hoarse whisper. What do you want? To join your crew, the dragon replied, and there was something almost amused in her mental voice. I've been watching your species for some time, Captain Shun. Humans fascinate me. You are young, violent, unpredictable, and, according to every other species in the galaxy, completely insane. You fight wars you cannot win, explore regions of space that terrify ancient civilizations, and somehow manage to survive encounters that would destroy races with 10 times your technological advancement. The dragon's massive head moved closer to his ship, and Marcus could see his reflection in one of those star-bright eyes. The Draconic Houses ruled this galaxy for over 50,000 years before your species even discovered fire. We have seen empires rise and fall, watch civilizations reach transcendence or destroy themselves in nuclear fire. But in all that time, we have never encountered anything quite like humanity. That's fascinating. Marcus managed, his vision swimming as the oxygen levels dropped even further. But I'm about to die here, so maybe we could speed this along. There was definitely amusement in the dragon's response. Direct. I appreciate that. Very well, Captain. I will repair your ship, restore your life support, and provide you with enough supplies and fuel to reach your destination. In return, you'll take me with you. Why? Marcus asked. You're obviously powerful enough to go anywhere you want. Why do you need a beat-up cargo hauler and his crew? Because I wish to understand humanity from the inside, the dragon explained. I want to see how you think, how you solve problems, how you face impossible odds with nothing but determination and creative desperation. The hegemony fears your species because they do not understand you. I believe that understanding is the key to preventing a war that will devastate this galaxy. Marcus's head was spinning now, and not just from oxygen deprivation. A war. The hegemony grows more aggressive toward human colonies every year. They see your expansion as a threat, your independence as an insult to their authority. War is inevitable, Captain, unless someone finds a way to bridge the gap between your species and the rest of the galaxy. I believe I can be that bridge, but only if I understand what makes humans so uniquely adaptable. The captain's hands were trembling as he gripped the edge of his control console. The offer was insane, impossible, and probably some kind of elaborate trap. But Sarah was turning blue in her pilot's seat, and he could hear Thomas's breathing becoming more labored by the minute. His crew was dying, and he was the only one still conscious to save them. "You can really fix our ship?" he asked. "Child's play," the dragon replied. "My technology is far more advanced than anything the hegemony possesses. I can have your vessel operating at peak efficiency within minutes." Marcus closed his eyes, knowing he was about to make a decision that would change everything. But that was the thing about humans. When faced with impossible choices, they chose survival and worried about the consequences later. "All right," he whispered. "Deal." What happened next was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The dragon's eyes suddenly blazed with brilliant light, and streams of energy flowed from her body to his ship like liquid lightning. The resilience shuddered as unknown forces swept through her hull, and Marcus watched his instrument panels come alive with readings he'd never seen before. The life support systems didn't just restart. They began operating with an efficiency that should have been impossible for a 20-year-old cargo hauler. The atmospheric recyclers hummed with new power, flooding the ship with fresh, clean air. The main drive went from 30% capacity to 150%, while the navigation computer began displaying star charts with a level of detail that made Marcus's old maps look like children's drawings. Within minutes, his crew was stirring, their color returning as oxygen levels normalized. Sarah was the first to sit up, blinking in confusion as she looked around the bridge. "Marcus?" she called groggily. "What happened?" "Last thing I remember, we were about to suffocate." "We had help," Marcus replied, his eyes still fixed on the massive dragon outside his viewport. "Sarah, I need you to sit down and stay calm, because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound completely insane. More insane than the hegemony trying to kill us." Sarah asked, but she was already looking at the readings on her pilot's console with amazement. "Marcus, these power levels are impossible. What did you do to our ship?" Before Marcus could answer, the dragon's voice filled the bridge, speaking aloud this time rather than using telepathy. Her voice was melodious and ancient, with harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. "Greetings, crew of the Resilience. I am Princess Seraphina Drexmore of the Draconic Houses. Your captain has agreed to grant me passage aboard your vessel in exchange for my assistance. I trust this arrangement is acceptable to you all." The silence on the bridge was absolute. Thomas and Elena had awakened during the dragon's speech, and all four humans were now staring at the massive creature outside their ship with expressions of shock, fear, and wonder. It was Elena who spoke first, her voice barely a whisper. "Dragons are real." "Indeed we are," Seraphina replied with what sounded like gentle amusement. "Though I suspect your species' legends about my people are somewhat inaccurate. We do not hoard gold or burn villages, for instance. This is impossible. Thomas muttered, running diagnostic checks on his engineering console. The power upgrades alone should have taken weeks to install. How did you? I am approximately 4,000 years old. Engineer Webb, Serafina interrupted. I have had considerable time to master technologies your species has not yet dreamed of. The modifications to your vessel are child's play by my standards. Sarah was staring at the navigation display, her pilot's training allowing her to process the implications faster than the others. These star charts, they show hyperspace routes through regions we thought were impossible to navigate. With this data, we could reach Arcturus Prime in half the time. The draconic houses mapped this galaxy before the hegemony species had discovered interstellar travel, Serafina explained. I am sharing knowledge that will allow you to operate with far greater efficiency and safety. Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing the mix of fear and excitement in their faces. I know this is a lot to process, he said, but we were dead 10 minutes ago. Now we're not only alive, but we have a chance to complete our mission and maybe learn something incredible in the process. She wants to come aboard our ship? Elena asked, looking between the dragon and her captain. How exactly does that work? She's the size of a small space station. Serafina's laughter was like musical thunder. An excellent question, Dr. Vasquez. Observe. What happened next defied every law of physics Marcus thought he understood. The massive dragon outside their ship began to shimmer and contract, her form becoming translucent as streams of energy coalesced around her. The process took less than 30 seconds, and when the light faded, there was no sign of the enormous creature that had been floating in space moments before. Instead, a figure materialized on their bridge in a flash of silver light. She appeared human at first glance, a tall woman with platinum blonde hair and striking features that seemed almost too perfect to be natural. But her eyes gave her away immediately. They were the same star-bright gold as the dragon's, with vertical pupils that marked her as definitely not human. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, and when she moved, Marcus could swear he saw scales shimmer beneath the surface. She was dressed in what looked like a form-fitting bodysuit made from some kind of advanced material that seemed to shift between silver and deep blue, depending on the angle of the light. A collar around her neck bore intricate designs that hurt to look at directly, and Marcus realized they were the same patterns he'd seen on the technological harness the dragon had worn. Shape-shifting, Thomas breathed. She's a shape-shifter. Among other things, Serafina confirmed, her voice now coming from perfectly human lips. This form will be more convenient for extended travel aboard your vessel. I trust it meets with your approval. Marcus found himself staring and forced himself to look away. Even in human form, there was something otherworldly about the dragon princess that made his survival instincts scream warnings while simultaneously fascinating him completely. It'll work, he managed, but we need to establish some ground rules if you're going to be part of this crew. Serafina raised one perfectly arched eyebrow. Ground rules? This is my ship, Marcus said firmly, drawing on 15 years of command experience to project authority he wasn't entirely sure he possessed. I'm a captain, and what I say goes. I don't care if you're 4,000 years old or if you can turn into a space dragon. Aboard the Resilience, you follow my orders. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the upgraded systems. Marcus half expected the dragon princess to laugh at his presumption or simply leave. Instead, she smiled, an expression that was both beautiful and slightly terrifying. Acceptable, she said. I'm here to learn about humanity. After all, it would defeat the purpose if I did not experience your command structure firsthand. You may consider me a passenger with specialized skills. Sarah cleared her throat. Speaking of which, we still need to reach Arcturus Prime. The plague victims won't wait while we figure out our new crew dynamics. Marcus nodded, grateful for the reminder of their mission. Right. Sarah, how long to reach Arcturus Prime with these new NAV charts? Sarah's fingers flew over her controls, and her eyes widened at the results. 18 hours, she said. With the hyperspace routes Princess Seraphina provided, we can bypass all the hegemony patrol zones and arrive directly in the system. Excellent, Marcus said. Thomas, I want you to familiarize yourself with whatever upgrades our passenger installed. Elena, make sure the medical supplies are still secure. We got a job to finish. As his crew moved to carry out their orders, Marcus caught Seraphina watching them with intense curiosity. There was something predatory about her attention, but also something that reminded him of a scholar studying a fascinating new species. Second thoughts? He asked quietly. On the contrary, she replied, I'm more intrigued than ever. In the space of minutes, you have gone from accepting certain death to planning the completion of your mission as if nothing unusual had occurred. Most species would still be in shock from our first contact. Marcus shrugged. We're human. We adapt. Indeed you do, Seraphina murmured, and there was something in her tone that suggested she was beginning to understand why the hegemony found his species so unsettling. As the Resilience prepared for its jump to hyperspace, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their rescue had been too convenient, too perfectly timed. But with his crew alive and his mission back on track, he decided those are questions for another day. He had no idea that taking a dragon princess aboard his ship would set in motion events that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. For now, it was enough that they were alive and they had a job to do. The Resilience jumped to hyperspace, carrying its impossible passenger toward a destiny none of them could have imagined. The journey through hyperspace aboard the upgraded Resilience was unlike anything Marcus had experienced in his 15 years of flying. The ship moved through the dimension between dimensions with a smoothness that made their previous hyperspace jumps feel like riding in a broken-down ground car. The vibrations that usually shook the ship during dimensional translation were completely absent, replaced by a gentle hum that seemed almost musical. Marcus found himself on the bridge 6 hours into their journey, unable to sleep despite his exhaustion. The events of the day kept replaying in his mind. The ambush, the near-death experience, and, most importantly, their impossible rescue by a creature that shouldn't exist. He'd sent his crew to get some rest while he took the first watch, but, in truth, he needed time to process what had happened. Seraphina had taken up residence in the ship's small observation lounge, a space that normally served as a combination recreation area and meeting room. Through the bridge viewport, Marcus could see her silhouette in the soft lighting, apparently studying something on a portable device that definitely hadn't been there before she arrived. Having trouble sleeping, Captain? Her voice came from directly behind him, causing Marcus to spin around in his chair. The Dragon Princess stood in the bridge doorway, moving with a fluid grace that reminded him she wasn't entirely human despite her current appearance. In the subdued lighting of the bridge, her otherworldly nature was more apparent. Her skin had a faint luminescence, and her golden eyes seemed to glow softly in the darkness. You move quietly for someone who's 300 meters long in her natural form, Marcus observed. Seraphina smiled, and Marcus noticed her canine teeth were slightly pointed. I have had considerable practice adapting to smaller spaces. May I join you? I find hyperspace travel soothing. Marcus gestured to the co-pilot's seat, and Seraphina settled into it with surprising familiarity. You've been on human ships before, he said. It wasn't a question. This is my first time aboard a human vessel, she replied. But There was something in her tone that suggested she wasn't telling the complete truth. However, I have studied your technology extensively. Your engineering is crude but effective. You achieve remarkable results with limited resources. Crude. Marcus raised an eyebrow. 5 minutes ago, you called it fascinating. Both statements can be true, Serafina said. Your species has been spacefaring for less than 3 centuries, yet you have spread across dozens of star systems and developed technologies that allow you to survive in environments that would kill most other species. It is a remarkable achievement for such a young civilization. Marcus studied her profile as she gazed out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. How long have the draconic houses been watching us? Since your first interstellar colony ship left Earth's solar system, Serafina replied. We make it our business to observe new spacefaring species. Most follow predictable patterns. They explore cautiously, establish contact with existing galactic civilizations, and eventually find their place in the established order. Humans did none of these things. We've never been particularly good at following rules, Marcus admitted. Indeed, you established colonies without permission, ignored territorial boundaries that have been respected for millennia, and when the hegemony tried to restrict your expansion, you fought back instead of negotiating. Serafina turned to look at him directly. Most species would have accepted the limitations and found a comfortable niche within hegemony space. Humans declared war instead. The border wars have lasted 5 years and cost millions of lives on both sides. Marcus had been a junior officer in the Terran Space Navy then, serving aboard the destroyer Defiant during some of the conflict's bloodiest battles. The official end of the war had come when Earth agreed to accept restrictions on human expansion, but Marcus knew it had really ended because both sides had exhausted themselves fighting. We didn't declare war, Marcus corrected. We refused to be caged. A distinction that makes all the difference, Serafina said thoughtfully. The hegemony expected humanity to behave rationally, to weigh the costs and benefits, and accept that submission was preferable to destruction. Instead, you chose to fight against impossible odds rather than surrender your freedom. And that interests you why? Serafina was quiet for a long moment, her golden eyes reflecting the shifting lights of hyperspace. Because I believe the galaxy is about to change in ways that will require the kind of thinking humanity specializes in, she said finally. The hegemony has maintained order through overwhelming force for 3,000 years, but that order is beginning to crack. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. What kind of changes? Are you familiar with the concept of the Void Princes, Captain? The name sent ice through Marcus's veins. Every spacer had heard whispered stories about the Void Princes, ancient entities that supposedly existed in the spaces between dimensions, beings of such power that even the hegemony's most advanced civilizations spoke of them only in hushed tones. Most people assumed they were myths, cautionary tales told to explain the occasional disappearance of ships in deep space. I thought they were legends, Marcus said carefully. As did most of the galaxy, Serafina replied. The Void Princes retreated from normal space over 50,000 years ago, after a war that nearly destroyed all life in this galaxy. They have slumbered in the dimensional depths ever since, waiting for the proper conditions to return. And those conditions are a species powerful enough to serve as their conduit into normal space, but young enough to be manipulated. Serafina's voice was grim. The hegemony has grown complacent in their dominance. They have forgotten the old warnings, dismissed the ancient safeguards as superstition. But my people remember, Marcus was beginning to understand why a dragon princess might want to study humanity up close. You think the Void Princes are planning to use humans? I think they're already trying, Serafina confirmed. The increase in hegemony aggression toward human colonies is not coincidence. Something is influencing their decision-making, pushing them toward a war that will weaken both sides and create the chaos the Void Princes need to manifest fully in our dimension. The implications were staggering. If Serafina was right, then humanity wasn't just fighting for independence. They were being manipulated into a conflict that could doom the entire galaxy. Why tell me this? What can one cargo captain and his crew do against entities that powerful? Because humans are the only species that has consistently defied expectations, Serafina replied. Every other race in a galaxy follows logical patterns of behavior. They can be predicted, manipulated, controlled. But humans, you have a gift for finding solutions that no one else would even consider. You're talking about our supposed insanity. I'm talking about your ability to think outside established parameters, Serafina corrected. To find hope where others see only despair, to fight when others would surrender, to adapt when others would break. These qualities may be the key to stopping what is coming. Marcus leaned back in his chair, trying to process the magnitude of what she was telling him. And your role in all this? To learn, Serafina said simply. To understand how human minds work, how you solve problems, how you find courage in hopeless situations. If I can understand the source of human adaptability, perhaps I can teach it to other species. Perhaps we can build an alliance capable of standing against the Void Princes. By following us around on cargo runs? Serafina smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human. You would be surprised how much can be learned from observing how people handle routine challenges. The same mental processes that allow a cargo captain to navigate bureaucratic obstacles or outmaneuver pirates are the ones that might find a way to defeat entities that exist outside normal reality. A soft chime from the navigation console interrupted their conversation. Sarah's voice came over the intercom a moment later, though she sounded groggy. Marcus? We're approaching the Arcturus system. You want me to take us out of hyperspace? I'll be right there, Marcus replied, then turned to Serafina. Time to see if your upgrades work as well in normal space. The transition from hyperspace was seamless, without the usual jarring sensation that accompanied dimensional shifts. One moment they were surrounded by the swirling colors of the interdimensional void, and the next they were floating in normal space near the edge of the Arcturus system. What they found waiting for them was not what Marcus had expected. Captain, Sarah's voice was tight with tension as she settled into her pilot's seat. I'm picking up multiple contacts in system. Hegemony signatures. Marcus's blood ran cold. Arcturus Prime was supposed to be outside the hegemony patrol zones, too remote and unimportant to warrant attention. If there were hegemony ships here, it could only mean one thing. How many ships? He asked, moving to the sensor display. At least 6 corvettes and a heavy cruiser in orbit around Arcturus Prime, Thomas reported from his engineering station. They're maintaining a standard blockade formation. Elena joined them on the bridge, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. The plague victims, she said. If the hegemony has blockaded the system. Marcus didn't need her to finish the thought. The colonists on Arcturus Prime were dying from a hemorrhagic fever that had already claimed over 1,000 lives. The medical supplies in their cargo hold contained the only known treatment, synthesized from rare compounds found in Earth's deep ocean trenches. Without those supplies, the entire colony would be dead within weeks. Options? Marcus asked his crew, though he already knew the answer. The Resilience was a cargo hauler, not a warship. Against 6 corvettes and a heavy cruiser, they wouldn't last 30 seconds in a straight fight. We could try to run the blockade, Sarah suggested without much conviction. Use the asteroid belt for cover. Maybe slip past them while they're not looking. The hegemony doesn't leave gaps in their blockades by accident, Thomas pointed out. They detect us long before we reach the planet. What about going back to the border and requesting official assistance? Elena asked. The Earth government would take weeks to organize a response, Marcus finished. These people don't have weeks. There's another option, Seraphina said quietly. All 4 humans turned to look at the Dragon Princess, who was studying the sensor readings with intense concentration. I could clear the blockade, she continued. In my natural form, I am more than a match for 6 corvettes and a cruiser. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. The moment you reveal yourself, every intelligence agency in the galaxy will want to know what we're doing with the Dragon. Our cover as simple smugglers is blown forever. Then, we find another way, Seraphina said with a slight smile. Tell me, Captain, when faced with an impossible situation, what is the first rule of human problem solving? Marcus thought about it for a moment, then grinned. Change the rules of the game. Precisely. So let us change the rules. What Seraphina proposed was either brilliant or completely insane, which made it perfectly suited to human sensibilities. The plan involved exploiting a loophole in hegemony military protocols that most species wouldn't even think to attempt, combined with technology that technically didn't exist according to any known database. You want us to broadcast a medical emergency signal using modified transponder codes that identify us as a hegemony hospital ship, Marcus summarized, even though we're clearly flying a human cargo hauler. The modifications I made to your ship included more than just life support upgrades, Seraphina explained. Your hull now projects a sensor shadow that can be configured to match any ship profile in my database. To their instruments, you will appear to be exactly what your transponder claims. That's illegal under about 40 different interstellar treaties, Thomas said weakly. Only if we're caught, Marcus pointed out, and only if we're actually planning to use the disguise for hostile purposes. We're delivering medical aid to plague victims. Technically, we really are a hospital ship. Sarah was already running calculations on her navigation computer. The approach vector would have to be perfect. Any deviation from standard protocol, and they'll see through the disguise. I have been studying hegemony military procedures for several thousand years, Seraphina said. I can provide you with the exact protocols required. Elena looked up from her medical supplies. What about when we reach the surface? The colonists will need time to synthesize and distribute the treatment. If the hegemony discovers what we're really doing, then we improvise, Marcus said, making his decision. Seraphina, how long to reconfigure our sensor profile? Already done, the Dragon Princess replied with a smile that showed her pointed teeth. I took the liberty of preparing several identity options during our conversation. Marcus shook his head in amazement. You really have been planning this? I prefer to be prepared for multiple contingencies, Seraphina admitted. A habit developed over 4 millennia of existence. As the Resilience began its approach toward Arcturus Prime, its sensor signature now identifying it as the hegemony medical vessel Mercy of Kethra, Marcus couldn't help but feel that they were crossing a line they might not be able to uncross. They were no longer simple smugglers trying to help a colony in need. They were active participants in whatever cosmic game Seraphina had described. But as he watched the readings from Arcturus Prime scroll across his screen, showing a world in the grip of a plague that was killing thousands of innocent people, Marcus realized he didn't care about the larger implications. He had medical supplies, people were dying, and he had a chance to save them. Everything else could wait until the job was done. Hegemony control. This is medical vessel Mercy of Kethra requesting emergency landing clearance, Sarah broadcast, her voice perfectly steady as she delivered the lie that might save thousands of lives. Acknowledged, Mercy of Kethra. You are cleared for immediate approach to landing Bay 7. Medical teams are standing by. Marcus smiled grimly as they began their descent toward the plague-ravaged colony. It looked like the first rule of human problem-solving was about to get another workout. The surface of Arcturus Prime was a study in desperation barely contained. As the resilience, disguised as the hegemony medical vessel Mercy of Kethra, settled onto the landing platform of Colonial Medical Center 7, Marcus could see the signs of a civilization teetering on the edge of collapse. The normally bustling spaceport was eerily quiet, with most of the landing bays sealed off and hazmat warnings posted on every available surface. Through the bridge viewports, he watched hegemony medical personnel in full environmental suits approach their ship. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were about to be met by the very people whose forces had tried to kill them less than 24 hours ago. Remember, Seraphina said quietly, her human form dressed now in what appeared to be a perfectly authentic hegemony medical uniform that she'd somehow materialized during their descent. Maintain the fiction at all costs. The moment they suspect deception, this becomes a military situation rather than a humanitarian one. Elena was reviewing her medical equipment one final time, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. The plague burning through Arcturus Prime's population was a hemorrhagic fever variant that had emerged from the planet's native wildlife. The colonists' immune systems had no defense against it, and the death toll was climbing by hundreds each day. The treatment synthesis will take at least 6 hours once we transfer the base compounds to their laboratories, she reported, and another 12 hours to produce enough doses for the entire affected population. 18 hours, Marcus muttered. We need to maintain this charade for 18 hours while surrounded by hegemony forces who would love nothing more than to capture a human crew. 24 hours, Sarah corrected from the pilot station. I monitored their orbital traffic control during approach. They rotate patrol schedules every 12 hours, with a shift change happening in approximately 6 hours. If we time our departure correctly, we can leave during the confusion of the rotation. Thomas looked up from his engineering console, where he'd been monitoring the modifications Seraphina had made to their systems. The sensor disguise is holding, but I'm seeing some power fluctuations. Whatever technology she's using to mask our signature, it's drawing more energy than our reactors typically produce. The modifications will hold for several days if necessary, Seraphina assured them, though I would prefer not to test their limits unnecessarily. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry through their airlock. Marcus straightened his borrowed hegemony medical uniform, another of Seraphina's impossible materializations, and activated the communication system. This is Chief Medical Officer Valdris Kethmore, came a voice speaking accented galactic standard. Permission to come aboard to coordinate medical supply transfer. Marcus nodded to his crew, and Elena activated the airlock. Moments later, a hegemony officer entered their ship, a tall, insectoid being with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to take in every detail of their cargo hold simultaneously. Marcus recognized the species as Zirak, one of the founding members of the Hegemony Council. Chief Medical Officer Kethmore, Marcus said, stepping forward with what he hoped was appropriate authority. I am Commander Theron of the Mercy of Kethra. We have emergency medical supplies requested by your colony administration. The Zirak's antennae twitched as he studied Marcus with those multifaceted eyes. Commander Theron, I was not informed that humans were serving aboard hegemony medical vessels. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat, but his expression remained calm. Special assignment, he replied. The medical compounds we're carrying were synthesized using Earth-based organisms. The medical board determined that human oversight was essential for proper handling. It was a reasonable explanation, and Serafina had briefed him that such temporary assignments occasionally occurred in genuine emergencies. The Xerac's antennae continued to twitch, but after a moment he seemed to accept the story. Very well. The situation here is dire. We have lost over 1,500 colonists in the past month, with new cases appearing daily. Our medical teams have been unable to synthesize an effective treatment. Elena stepped forward, her medical credentials apparently impressive enough to earn the Xerac's attention. Dr. Martinez, she introduced herself, using the false identity Serafina had provided. I've reviewed your preliminary reports. The fever variant is particularly aggressive, but the compounds we've brought should provide the foundation for an effective antiviral treatment. How certain are you of success? Kethmore asked. 97%, Elena replied without hesitation. We've seen similar outbreaks on 3 other worlds. The treatment protocol is well established. The confidence in her voice was genuine. The medical supplies they carried really were the cure these people needed. The only deception was in who was providing them. Excellent. We will begin transfer immediately. How long for synthesis? 6 hours for initial synthesis, then 12 hours for mass production, Elena confirmed. We'll need access to your primary biochemical laboratory and a team of qualified technicians. Of course, I will escort you personally. As Elena prepared to leave with the hegemony medical chief, Marcus caught her eye. 2 decades of working together had created a communication system that transcended words. She nodded slightly. She understood the stakes and would maintain their cover. After the medical team departed with their precious cargo, Marcus found himself alone on the bridge with Serafina. The Dragon Princess was studying the colony through the ship's external cameras, her golden eyes reflecting an intensity that reminded him of her true nature. Guilt is an interesting human emotion, she observed without looking at him. What makes you think I feel guilty? Your biometric readings. Elevated heart rate, increased perspiration, muscle tension consistent with psychological stress. Serafina turned to face him. You are saving thousands of lives, yet you feel guilty about deceiving those who would help you accomplish this goal. Most species would focus solely on the positive outcome. Marcus leaned against the navigation console. Most species probably wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. If humanity had accepted the hegemony's restrictions, these colonists would have received help through official channels. Would they? Serafina asked. I have studied hegemony bureaucracy extensively. The request for these specific medical compounds was filed over 6 weeks ago. It has been caught in committee reviews and territorial jurisdiction disputes. At the current rate of processing, approval would have come approximately 3 weeks after the last colonist died. The brutally clinical assessment sent a chill through Marcus. You're saying they were going to let these people die. I am saying the hegemony prioritizes stability and proper procedure over individual lives, Serafina corrected. It is not malicious. It is simply how large bureaucracies function when they become disconnected from the people they govern. And that's why you think war is coming. That is one reason, Serafina confirmed. The hegemony has become so focused on maintaining order that they have forgotten why order matters. Meanwhile, humanity continues to act based on immediate moral imperatives rather than long-term strategic calculations. These philosophies are fundamentally incompatible. Marcus was about to respond when Sarah's voice crackled over the intercom from her position in the ship's modified sensor array room. "Marcus, we have a problem. I'm detecting increased orbital traffic. 3 more ships just jumped into the system." "Hegemony?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Negative. These are. I'm not sure what they are. The sensor profiles don't match anything in our databases." Marcus and Serafina exchanged glances. "Show me," Marcus said. The main display screen activated, showing a tactical overview of the Arcturus system. The 3 new contacts were moving in formation toward the planet, their approach vector suggesting they were definitely not friendly visitors. "Configuration suggests military vessels," Serafina said, studying the readings with obvious concern. "But you are correct. These designs are not in any known database." "How is that possible? Even if there's some kind of experimental ships, there should be some recognizable elements." "Unless they are not from this galaxy," Serafina said quietly. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Void Princes? Possibly. Or their servants. Serafina's human form began to shimmer slightly, as if her concentration was wavering. The timing is too convenient to be coincidence. Someone knew that human ships would be in this system. Alarms began sounding throughout the medical facility as the hegemony forces detected the approaching vessels. Marcus could see the blockade ships moving to intercept, their weapons powering up as they prepared for combat. "Sarah, get Elena back here now," Marcus ordered. "We need to be ready to run if this goes sideways." "Already on it." "But, Marcus, she says the synthesis process has barely begun. If we leave now, thousands of people die." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible decision. Stay and risk capture or death when the mysterious ships arrived, or flee and abandon the colonists to the plague. "There is another option," Serafina said softly. "I could reveal my true form and assist the hegemony forces. 3 ships, regardless of their origin, would not be a significant challenge. And blow our cover completely," Marcus pointed out. "Plus, if those really are servants of the Void Princes, you'd be revealing yourself to exactly the entities you're trying to stay hidden from. Sometimes the only way to maintain a secret is to sacrifice a smaller truth," Serafina replied. "If I act quickly, I might be able to destroy the intruders before they can relay information about my presence." The tactical display updated as the unknown ships closed range with the hegemony blockade. What happened next defied every principle of space combat Marcus had ever learned. The hegemony corvettes opened fire first, their particle beams lancing out toward the intruders. The beams struck their targets dead on and simply vanished, absorbed by some kind of energy field that shouldn't have been possible. The unknown ships returned fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. One of the hegemony corvettes simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but somehow edited out of reality. The remaining ships scattered, their formation dissolving as panic set in. "Those are not conventional weapons," Serafina said, her voice tight with concern. "The technology is familiar." "Familiar how?" "From the last war against the Void Princes. 50,000 years ago. The battle in orbit was becoming increasingly one-sided. The mysterious ships moved through space in ways that violated the laws of physics, appearing to teleport from one position to another without crossing the intervening distance. Their weapons continued to simply delete portions of the hegemony fleet, leaving nothing behind but empty space. "Elena's coming back aboard," Sarah reported. "But she says the synthesis isn't even 20% complete. If we leave now." "I know," Marcus said grimly. "How long for a minimum effective dose?" something that could at least slow the plague spread. She says 2 more hours minimum, and that's just for a few hundred doses. Marcus watched another hegemony ship disappear from the tactical display and made his decision. Tell her to grab whatever compounds she can and get back here. We're leaving in 10 minutes. Marcus, Serafina said urgently, I may be able to accelerate the synthesis process. The technology exists, but it would require revealing capabilities that would raise questions. What kind of questions? The kind that would make the hegemony very interested in capturing and studying your ship, Serafina replied. But I could synthesize enough doses to treat the entire colony in under an hour. Marcus looked at the tactical display, where the unknown ships were systematically destroying the orbital defenses. In a few minutes, they would be in position to land troops on the planet's surface. The colonists would face not just a plague, but potentially something far worse. Do it, he decided. Whatever it takes. Serafina nodded and moved toward the cargo bay where Elena had been working. Prepare for immediate departure. Once I begin the synthesis acceleration, we will have perhaps 30 minutes before the process completes and local sensors detect what I have done. What about the hegemony forces on the ground? Leave that to me, Serafina said with a smile that was definitely not human. I believe it is time for the medical team from the Mercy of Kethra to demonstrate some of the more advanced capabilities of their technology. As Marcus watched the Dragon Princess disappear into the cargo bay, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed another line in their rapidly escalating involvement with galactic politics. But as another hegemony ship vanished from the orbital battle, he realized that lines might be a luxury they could no longer afford. The plague would be cured. The question was whether any of them would survive long enough to see it distributed. Elena burst onto the bridge 20 minutes later, her medical equipment hastily packed, and her face flushed with excitement. I don't know what Serafina did, she gasped, but the synthesis is proceeding at a rate that should be physically impossible. We'll have enough doses for the entire colony in another 10 minutes. Good, Marcus said, studying the tactical display where the mysterious ships had finished destroying the orbital defenses and were now beginning atmospheric entry. Because we're about to have company. As if summoned by his words, the intercom crackled with an incoming transmission. But the voice that emerged was not from the Colonial Medical Center or the hegemony forces. Human vessel, the voice said, speaking in perfect galactic standard but with harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. You will surrender immediately. Your species has been selected for integration. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing his own grim determination reflected in their faces. Humanity had spent 3 centuries learning to survive in a hostile galaxy. It looked like those lessons were about to be put to the ultimate test. Integration, he called back. Sorry, but we're not really the joining type. Sarah, prep for emergency takeoff. It's time to go. As the Resilience began its escape from Arcturus Prime, carrying the cure for a plague and fleeing from an enemy that could edit ships out of existence, Marcus realized that their simple cargo run had become something far more significant. They were no longer just smugglers trying to help a colony. They were witnesses to the opening moves of a war that could destroy everything they'd ever known. And somehow, with the Dragon Princess as their guide, they were going to have to find a way to fight back against enemies that existed beyond the normal rules of reality. The Resilience shuddered as it lifted off from Arcturus Prime's surface, its engines straining against the planet's gravity while unknown weapons carved through the atmosphere around them. Marcus had his hands locked around his command chair's armrests as Sarah pushed their ship through evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible before Serafina's upgrades. 3 hostiles in pursuit, Thomas reported from his engineering station, his voice tight with concentration. They're not using conventional propulsion. I'm reading spatial distortion patterns that don't match anything in our databases. Distance to orbit? Marcus asked. 30 seconds at current acceleration, Sarah replied, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought to keep them ahead of their pursuers. But, Marcus, these ships are gaining on us. Whatever they're using for propulsion, it's faster than our engines. Through the bridge viewports, Marcus could see the curve of Arcturus Prime falling away beneath them. The planet's surface was dotted with fires where the mysterious attackers had struck population centers, and the orbital space above was littered with debris from the destroyed hegemony fleet. Whatever these entities were, they had just demonstrated the ability to wipe out an entire star system's defenses in less than an hour. Serafina, Marcus called toward the cargo bay where the Dragon Princess was still working on the medical synthesis. We could really use some of that advanced technology you mentioned. 2 more minutes, came her reply. The synthesis process cannot be interrupted or the entire batch will be ruined. We might not have 2 minutes, Elena said from her position at the medical monitoring station. The colonial medical teams are confirming the treatment works. Infection rates are already dropping where they've administered the first doses. But if we're destroyed, an explosion rocked the ship as one of the pursuing vessel's weapons passed close enough to overload their rear shields. Warning lights flashed across every console, and the smell of burning electronics filled the bridge. Port engine offline, Thomas reported. I'm rerouting power through backup systems, but we're down to 60% thrust. Sarah, can you compensate? Marcus asked. Working on it, she replied through gritted teeth. But at this rate, they'll overtake us before we can jump to hyperspace. The tactical display showed their situation in stark detail. The 3 pursuing ships were closing rapidly, their impossible weapons charging for another volley. Even with Serafina's upgrades, the Resilience was still fundamentally a cargo hauler trying to outrun what appeared to be purpose-built warships from beyond known space. Captain, a new voice crackled over their communication system. This is Commander Vexthal aboard the heavy cruiser Dominion. We are moving to intercept the hostile vessels. Marcus blinked in surprise. The Dominion was the hegemony flagship that had been maintaining the blockade around Arcturus Prime. According to the tactical display, it should have been destroyed along with the rest of the fleet. Commander Vexthal, I thought your ship was lost, Marcus replied, maintaining his cover as a hegemony medical vessel. We managed to avoid destruction by hiding in the planet's electromagnetic shadow, the hegemony commander explained. Our sensors show you are carrying medical personnel from the surface. We will provide escort until you can reach hyperspace. The irony was almost overwhelming. The same hegemony forces that had been hunting Marcus's crew across the galaxy were now trying to save them from an even more dangerous enemy. But as Marcus watched the Dominion emerge from behind Arcturus Prime's largest moon, weapons blazing as it engaged the pursuing ships, he felt nothing but gratitude. Thomas, can we give them targeting data on our pursuers? Marcus asked. Already transmitted, Thomas replied. Though I'm not sure conventional weapons will be effective against these ships. He was right to be concerned. The Dominion's particle cannons struck the nearest hostile vessel with enough force to vaporize an asteroid, but the beams simply vanished upon contact with the ship's hull. The return volley from the unknown vessel was more successful. A beam of twisted space-time that punched through the Dominion-S shields and carved a massive section from its starboard hull. Conventional weapons are useless, Marcus muttered. His words were cut off as Serafina suddenly appeared on the bridge, her human form shimmering with barely contained energy. The synthesis process was apparently complete, because she no longer carried the careful composure she'd maintained throughout their mission. The situation has escalated beyond what conventional tactics can handle, she announced, her golden eyes blazing with inner fire. I must reveal my true nature. Serafina, wait. Marcus started, but she was already moving toward the bridge's main viewport. The medical supplies have been successfully synthesized and transmitted to the colonial medical centers, she said over her shoulder. Your mission is complete, Captain. Now it is time to ensure you survive to undertake others. What happened next would be burned into Marcus's memory for the rest of his life. Serafina stepped directly through the bridge viewport, not opening it, but simply passing through the reinforced transparent steel as if it were mist. The moment she emerged into the vacuum of space, her human form began to expand and transform. The dragon that materialized outside their ship was even more magnificent and terrifying than Marcus remembered. 300 meters of silver and gold scales that seemed to absorb and reflect light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. 4 wings that spanned nearly a kilometer when fully extended. And eyes like miniature stars that blazed with an intelligence older than human civilization. But this time, Serafina wasn't hiding her true capabilities. The technological harness Marcus had glimpsed during their first encounter was now fully active, crackling with energies that made their ship's sensors scream warnings about radiation levels that should have been lethal. All vessels, Serafina's voice boomed across every communication frequency simultaneously. You will cease hostilities immediately. This system is under the protection of the Draconic Houses. The response from the unknown ships was immediate. They broke off their attack on the Resilience and turned toward this new threat. Their weapons, which had effortlessly destroyed hegemony warships, lanced out toward the Dragon Princess. Serafina simply absorbed the attacks. The beams that had been carving holes in space-time struck her scales and vanished, their energy somehow converted or redirected in ways that Marcus's understanding of physics couldn't accommodate. For a moment, the dragon hung motionless in space, and Marcus wondered if she was merely more resilient than her opponents rather than truly superior. Then she retaliated. What emerged from Serafina's maw wasn't fire in any conventional sense. It was concentrated stellar plasma, the same energies that powered stars, shaped and directed with precision that spoke of technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. The beam struck the nearest hostile ship and didn't simply destroy it. It unmade it, breaking down its molecular structure and scattering its component atoms across 1,000 cubic kilometers of space. The remaining 2 ships attempted to flee, their impossible propulsion systems activating as they tried to escape to hyperspace. Serafina was faster. She moved through normal space in ways that defied everything Marcus knew about momentum and acceleration, appearing beside the fleeing vessels before they could complete their jump calculations. The second ship died as quickly as the first, consumed by stellar fire that burned hotter than the core of a sun. The third vessel managed to activate some kind of defensive field that deflected Serafina's initial attack, but it only delayed the inevitable. The Dragon Princess simply changed tactics, using her claws, each one the size of a fighter craft, to physically tear the ship apart despite whatever exotic materials it was constructed from. In less than 5 minutes, 3 vessels that had destroyed an entire hegemony fleet were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Serafina floated among the debris, her scales still glowing with residual energy, and Marcus realized he was witnessing power on a scale he'd never imagined. Dragon Princess, came Commander Vexthal's voice over the communication system, and Marcus could hear the awe and terror in the hegemony officer's tone. The draconic houses were thought to be extinct. Reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated, Serafina replied, her mental voice somehow reaching every ship in the system simultaneously. We have simply chosen to remain apart from galactic politics. Recent events have made that isolation no longer tenable. The implications were staggering. If Serafina was representative of Draconic House capabilities, then there was an entire civilization of beings with power that made the hegemony's greatest weapons look like primitive clubs. The balance of galactic politics had just shifted in ways that no one could have predicted. Commander Vexthal, Serafina continued, you will report to your superiors that the attack on this system was perpetrated by servants of entities from beyond normal space. The threat they represent supersedes all current territorial disputes. The Draconic Houses are prepared to discuss an alliance against this common enemy. Yes, Dragon Princess, Vexthal replied. I will relay your message immediately. Serafina turned her massive head toward the Resilience, and Marcus found himself staring into those star-bright eyes through his bridge viewport. Captain Shun, please prepare to receive me aboard your vessel. We have much to discuss. Of course, Marcus managed, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. The Dragon Princess began to contract again, her massive form dissolving into streams of energy that coalesced into the familiar human shape that stepped back through the viewport as if the solid transparent steel wasn't there. The medical crisis has been resolved, she announced to the stunned bridge crew. All colonists who received the treatment are showing rapid recovery, and the plague vectors have been successfully neutralized. That's... Elena shook her head in amazement. That's wonderful news. But what just happened out there? Those ships, your true form, the way you destroyed them, are revealed capabilities that I had hoped to keep hidden longer, Serafina replied. But the presence of Void Prince servants in this system forced my hand. The enemy knows that the Draconic Houses have returned to active involvement in galactic affairs. Sarah was studying her navigation instruments with a frown. I'm reading hyperspace distortions throughout the system. Someone's been monitoring everything that just happened. Of course, Serafina said grimly. Both the hegemony and the Void Princes will now know that their calculations must be adjusted. The war I warned you about has just become inevitable. Marcus slumped in his command chair, the full magnitude of their situation finally hitting him. They had started this journey as simple smugglers trying to deliver medical supplies to plague victims. Now, they were carrying a dragon princess whose true capabilities had just been revealed to the most powerful forces in the galaxy, making them targets for everyone from hegemony intelligence agencies to entities that existed outside normal reality. So what happens now, he asked. Now we disappear, Serafina replied. The Resilience and her crew are about to become the most hunted beings in known space. The hegemony will want to study my technology. The Void Princes will want to eliminate the threat I represent, and various other powers will see us as either valuable assets or dangerous obstacles. Great, Thomas muttered. From smugglers to galactic fugitives in one day. There is a safe harbor, Serafina continued. The Draconic Houses maintain hidden facilities throughout the galaxy. I can guide you to one where we can plan our next moves without fear of discovery. And what exactly are our next moves? Marcus asked. Serafina's expression was grim. We prepare for war, Captain. The Void Princes have begun their return to normal space, using the conflict between humanity and the hegemony as a catalyst. If we cannot find a way to unite the galaxy's free peoples against this threat, Every civilization we have ever known will fall to entities that view entire species as nothing more than tools for their own resurrection. As the Resilients prepared to jump to hyperspace, leaving behind a star system forever changed by their presence, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. They had saved thousands of lives by delivering medical supplies to a plague-ravaged colony. In the process, they had also potentially doomed the galaxy by revealing the existence of powers that had been hidden for 50,000 years. But that was the thing about being human. You did what was right in the moment and dealt with the consequences as they came. And if those consequences happened to involve fighting entities from beyond normal space alongside a dragon princess who could unmake warships with stellar fire, well, that was just another challenge to overcome. "Sarah, take us out," Marcus ordered. "Serafina, you have the coordinates for this safe harbor?" "Edo. But be warned, Captain, once we reach the Draconic stronghold, there will be no turning back. You and your crew will become active participants in a war that will determine the fate of every living being in this galaxy." Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing determination mixed with fear in their faces. They had come too far together to back down now. "Then, I guess it's a good thing we're too stubborn to quit," he said. "Take us to your people, Princess. It's time we learned what we're really fighting for." As the Resilients jumped to hyperspace, carrying its impossible passenger toward a destiny none of them could have imagined, Marcus realized that their greatest adventure was just beginning. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity was given weapons that could reshape reality itself. He just hoped they would prove worthy of the trust that a dragon princess had placed in them. The hyperspace journey to Serafina's hidden stronghold lasted 3 days, during which the crew of the Resilients had time to process the magnitude of what they had witnessed. Marcus found himself spending long hours on the bridge, staring out at the swirling colors of the interdimensional void, while trying to reconcile the simple cargo run they had started with the galactic war they were now part of. During the journey, Serafina had shared more details about the Draconic houses and their long history. The dragons were among the galaxy's oldest civilizations, predating even the entities that would eventually become the hegemony by tens of thousands of years. They had ruled through wisdom rather than force, guiding younger species toward enlightenment and technological advancement. But 50,000 years ago, the Void Princes had emerged from the spaces between dimensions, entities of such alien malevolence that they sought to consume and corrupt everything they encountered. The war that followed had nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy, ending only when the surviving dragons managed to banish the Void Princes back to their dimensional prison at the cost of their own civilization's collapse. "We retreated to hidden strongholds scattered throughout the galaxy," Serafina had explained during one of their conversations. "For 50 millennia, we have watched and waited, rebuilding our strength while hoping the Void Princes would remain dormant. But corruption has a way of finding cracks in even the strongest prisons. Now, as they prepared to emerge from hyperspace, Marcus was about to see one of those hidden strongholds for himself. The transition from hyperspace was seamless, but what awaited them on the other side defied every expectation he'd formed about dragon civilization. They materialized in what appeared to be empty space, with no stars visible in any direction. The darkness was absolute, without even the distant glow of nebulae or galaxies to provide reference points. For a moment, Marcus thought something had gone wrong with their navigation, that they were lost in some void between star systems. Then, the concealment field deactivated. The fortress that appeared around them was a structure of impossible beauty and scale. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, its surface covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with soft, multicolored light. The architecture was organic, yet clearly artificial, as if the entire structure had been grown rather than built from some living crystal that responded to its creator's will. "Welcome to Sanctuary Prime," Seraphina announced, her voice filled with pride and ancient sadness. "The last great stronghold of the draconic houses." "It's," Elena began, then stopped, apparently unable to find words adequate to the sight before them. "Beautiful," Sarah finished softly, "and massive. Marcus, this thing is bigger than most space stations." Thomas was studying his sensor readings with fascination. "The energy signatures are incredible. Whatever power source they're using, it's generating more energy than a small star. The strongholds were designed to be self-sufficient for thousands of years," Seraphina explained. "Each one contains manufacturing facilities, research laboratories, living quarters, and defensive systems capable of protecting against threats we hoped never to face again." As the resilience approached the fortress, sections of the crystalline hull dilated like living tissue, revealing docking bays sized to accommodate vessels much larger than their cargo hauler. Automated guidance systems took control of their ship, steering them toward a bay that seemed to have been specifically prepared for their arrival. "How many of your people are here?" Marcus asked as they settled onto the landing platform. "Currently, Sanctuary Prime houses approximately 3,000 dragons," Seraphina replied. "It may sound like a large number, but before the Void War, our population numbered in the millions across hundreds of worlds." The magnitude of that loss struck Marcus silent. An entire civilization, reduced to a few thousand survivors hiding in scattered fortresses throughout the galaxy. It put humanity's struggles with the hegemony in a very different perspective. As they prepared to disembark, Seraphina paused at the airlock. "I should warn you," she said. "Many of my people have not seen humans in person before. You may find their reactions intense." "Intense how?" Elena asked. "Dragons are naturally curious beings," Seraphina explained. "And humans represent something we have never encountered before, a species that consistently defies logical prediction. You will likely find yourselves the subject of considerable attention." She wasn't exaggerating. The moment they stepped off their ship, Marcus and his crew found themselves surrounded by dragons in various forms. Some maintained their natural shapes, beings of incredible size and beauty whose presence seemed to make the air itself shimmer with barely contained power. Others had adopted forms similar to Seraphina's human appearance, though each bore the telltale golden eyes and subtle scales that marked them as decidedly non-human. All of them were staring at the humans with an intensity that made Marcus's skin crawl. "Princess Seraphina," one of the dragons said, his form a magnificent creature of deep blue scales shot through with veins of silver. "You return with the subjects of your study." "Lord Commander Drexval," Seraphina replied formally. "May I present Captain Marcus Chun and his crew? They have provided invaluable assistance in understanding human adaptability patterns." The Dragon Lord's golden eyes fixed on Marcus with the intensity of a being who had lived for millennia and seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. "Captain Chun, your species has caused considerable disruption to established galactic order. We have a talent for that," Marcus replied, meeting the dragon's gaze despite the instinctive urge to look away, though usually not on purpose. Something that might have been amusement flickered in the ancient being's eyes. "Indeed. Princess Seraphina has reported your encounter with Void Prince servants at Arcturus Prime. Her decision to reveal herself was precipitous, but perhaps necessary given the circumstances. The enemy has accelerated their timeline, Serafina said. Active manifestations in normal space suggest they have found a way to bypass the dimensional barriers more quickly than we anticipated. Which brings us to why you have brought humans to our most secure facility. Another dragon interjected, this one appearing as a tall female with platinum hair and scales that seem to absorb light. Lady Zaratiel questions the wisdom of revealing our existence to a species known for its inability to maintain secrets. Marcus felt his crew tense beside him, but he forced himself to remain calm. With respect, Lady Zaratiel, we've managed to keep plenty of secrets over the years. But more importantly, we're not here by choice. Your princess offered us a bargain, and we honored it. If you want to question someone's judgment, question hers, not ours. The temperature in the docking bay seemed to drop several degrees as every dragon present focused their attention on Marcus. He had just challenged the wisdom of their princess in front of what were clearly high-ranking members of their society. In most cultures, that would be considered either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. Serafina stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Captain Shin speaks truth, Lord Commander. I made the decision to reveal myself based on my analysis of human behavioral patterns. If that decision was an error, the responsibility is mine alone. Your analysis, Drexval said slowly, suggested that humans possess qualities that might be useful in the coming conflict. Perhaps you would care to elaborate. Humans consistently demonstrate the ability to find solutions that other species would never consider, Serafina replied. They adapt to impossible situations, survive against overwhelming odds, and refuse to accept defeat even when logic suggests surrender.